This is George Thomas in 1931. This is Michigan, Ben Thomas in the middle, and Sally Thomas and her friend Maxine Kirchhoff. Now Maxine Cross. Emma Kreider on the right with George Thomas in Michigan, 1931. Ben Thomas with his son George in Michigan, George Thomas on the steps of the Michigan cottage, his first summer in Michigan. This is Emma Kreider on the right, the aunt of George. Ben Thomas playing tennis on the beach's tennis court. That's his Maxine Kirchhoff and Sally Thomas. It's Maxine. Her name later was Cross, Maxine Cross. George Thomas at about 10 months old. Ben Thomas. These people are unidentifiable. This is George Thomas on the beach in Old Mission with his mother. Sally Thomas on the right with her best friend Maxine Kirchhoff Cross on the beach in Old Mission in front of the Thomas cottage. That is one of the Beach Boys, possibly David, next door. These people are people I don't recognize. Sally Thomas feeding George, 1931, when George was less than a year old. He was born in September. This is a birthday party at the Bishopric House. I believe that is Alice Campbell in the middle with the dark hair. That's Bob Garvey in the front. This is a birthday party, probably down at what is now Logan Schliff's house. That's the Potter Cottage next door. That's Emma Kreider holding George. This is Ben and Sally Thomas paddling the canoe with Maxine Kirchhoff in the middle. Aunt Emma Kreider. This is a panoramic view of what the Old Mission Harbor used to look like. This is possibly in Birmingham, Alabama, where Ben Thomas had his first teaching job at Birmingham Southern University. This is an unknown girl. Lardy's General Store. The hired help in the white jackets. George Thomas again in Michigan. A volleyball game in Michigan. This must have been a birthday party. There's Bob Garvey in the front there. This is a birthday party at the Beach Cottage, now the King Cottage. This is George Thomas again. This is George Thomas, probably in Birmingham, Alabama, where he was born and lived for the first, perhaps 2 years of his life. George in Birmingham learning to walk. George again. Still in Birmingham. This is still in Birmingham. George is on the left with his little friend on the right, still in Birmingham. is a friend in Birmingham. This is George trying to kill his friend. Sally, Thomas, and George. This is a little girl in Birmingham with George. Still in Birmingham. George is on the left. These are neighbors in Birmingham. That is George's grandmother on his father's side in Birmingham. That is Martha Pickering. Ben Thomas's mother. Sally Thomas. Ben with his mother and son George. Ben again with George. George trying to get the car to go. This is George, probably still in Alabama, with his little girlfriend. Still trying to get the car to go. This is in Alabama. On the right is Sally Thomas, the perfect flapper. These are probably professors from Birmingham Southern. Sally on the left there. Ben in the middle. This is a graduation ceremony at Birmingham Southern University where Ben taught for about 2 or 3 years. That's Ben right there facing the camera. This is an unknown child. This is George on the right with a little girl in Alabama. This is in Michigan. George in Michigan. Emma Kreider. I'm not sure who that boy is with George. Emma Kreider. That might be Clarice Camel Holtz in the buggy. I'm not sure. This is George being pushed by some children I don't recognize. George picking cherries. That's Noni the cook helping him. That's Noni. Mary Kreider putting the children in the buggy at Alice Campbell. Touring Old Mission, that's the old store that's now boarded up. The Beaches tennis court. This is, I believe, Clarice in the spotted dress. Clarice Campbell Holtz. That is Martha Thomas Barthel. I believe that is Clarice. I believe that's Carolyn Oxtoby. Carolyn Barthoff Oxtoby. This is an unknown swimmer. This is George going to Ida Reese's farm at the top of the hill in Old Mission. Joe Malujic with his fishing shack at the public beach. Mrs. Campbell, Clarice Holtz's mother. This is in Springfield, Illinois. 1910 Wiggins Avenue. It's Ben Thomas and George. That's the front door of 1910 Wiggins Avenue. Probably George's first snow, having moved from Alabama to Illinois. This is the maid before the addition was put on the back of the house. I'm not sure who this child is. This is George. This is Martha and Ernest Pickering, Ben Thomas's mother and stepfather, and George on his tricycle. I don't know who that is. These are just friends. This is George. I don't know who that is or that. This is on Wiggins Avenue in Springfield. This is the house next door in Springfield on the corner. This is the front yard of 1910 Wiggins Avenue. I don't know who the little girl is. This is possibly out of sequence. George in the snow again. This is possibly Martha Thomas Barthel. This is friends of the family. I don't know their names. This is George in Michigan with his mother, I think. Still in Michigan. It is Sally Thomas with George. Oops. George on his father's shoulders. Sally Thomas, perhaps with Martha, but I don't think so. This is in Springfield. This is Martha. Martha Thomas Barthel. She was born in January 1934. This is Kurt Martini, son of our doctor who lived around the corner. The backyard of Wiggins Avenue with Kurt Martini. My grandmother Kreider holding Martha. That would be Emma Passfield Kreider. These are just friends. Stewie Robinson, a friend, George. There's Stewie Robinson with the pipe. Looks like Kurt Martini again with George. Emma Kreider on the left. Mrs. Poston with Marie Poston. Must be Mrs. Poston's mother. This is Mrs. Poston with Marie, Martha's best friend who lived behind us. Ben Thomas with Martha. George Thomas with an unknown friend. Martha Thomas at the Martini's house. Kurt Martini, George Thomas, Martha the baby. I don't know who that child is. This is Martha. Kurt Martini. Martha Thomas. This is on Bates Avenue in front of the Martini house. Martha. This is Martha. In the backyard of 1910 Wiggins. George and Martha. A baseball game, probably in St. Louis. This is at the Kreider House on Chatham Road. I believe the dogs are Beezer and Bowser. This is where Grandma Kreider, Ganny, and Mary and Emma Kreider and Paul Kreider lived. I don't know who this lady is. It's Grandmother Pickering, Ben Thomas's mother. That's Martha. I don't know who the other child is. This is Martha or Marie. Possibly Marie Poston and Martha. Kurt Martini. Martha and George. I don't know who the girl on the right is. Daughter of a friend. Martha in the background. George in the front. That's Martha. Martha with her doll buggy. George. Martha. Ben Thomas. This is a birthday party, probably at the Martini house. That's Sally Robinson on the gurney. Mrs. Patton. Children of friends. This is at the Kreider house. Mary Kreider with Fritz. Fritz leading the pony. Fritz Bawulski. Nancy Martini in the boat. Kurt Martini and George. There's Nancy Martini. Woods was her married name. That's George and Kurt. This is Heine, the dachshund. Our dachshund who ended up living with Emma and Mary Kreider. But he was originally our dachshund. This is on Wiggins Avenue. Martha. I don't know who these boys are. This might be Sarah. Martha on our Wiggins Avenue driveway. George with what we called a push me pull you. Martha. There's Heine as a puppy. This is Sarah, born in 1935. Martha with her doll. And George. Martha and George. Marie Poston, Fair. Washington Park. Martha and George at Washington Park. Marie Poston Fair on the right with Martha, 1 day apart in age. This is at the Martini House on Bates. Martha Thomas Barthel in Michigan. George. Ben Thomas. Carolyn Barthov Oxtoby. Chick Patton on the right there. Dr. Charles Patton with his mother. This is Martha. And George. Sarah in Michigan. Sarah born November 1935. Martha, George, and I don't know. This is Sarah. Martha. Sarah in Springfield now. This is 1910 Wiggins Avenue. Martha and Sarah learning to walk. Martha. This is Kurt Martini's house. This is back on Wiggins Avenue, Martha. I don't know who those women are. This is Martha. Marie Poston on the left. That's Sarah and Marie. There's Marie. Sarah. Sarah being pushed by Martha. George learning to skate on Wiggins Avenue. Sarah behind him. Martha. That's Sarah. That's Marie Poston Fair. Marie and Martha. George and Martha in Michigan. It looks like Bob Garvey. That's Sarah. Sarah with her dad. Bob Garvey. Sarah again. This is Martha at the zoo. And George. Sally Thomas. This is Sarah. And Martha. And George. George and Martha and Sarah in Michigan. Bill Patton on the left, Sarah on the right with their mothers. I don't know who that woman is. Martha. It looks like Mrs. Hoff. That's Sarah, topless. Mrs. Campbell, Clarice Holtz's mother. I don't know who that girl is. Daughter of a friend. This is in Florida. Sally Thomas on the right. This was a trip to Florida by Ben and Sally Thomas, probably without children. Ben Thomas playing golf in Florida. Sally Thomas playing golf. This is probably a glass-bottom boat. This is an Easter egg hunt at the Martini house. Sarah, Marie, and Martha. Marie on the left, Martha and Sarah on the right. That's Uncle Walt Martini. He was our doctor and friend, father of Kurt. Martha. This is a birthday party. I'm not sure who the birthday girl is. That's Sarah in the front. Martha torturing Sarah. Now we are back to Michigan. That's Mary Cross, Maxine Kirchhoff Cross's daughter. Carolyn Oxtoby on the right. Steve Barthoff, her brother. This is Stewie Robinson, son of a friend. This is Sarah. And at Marie Poston's house. Sarah. This is at the Martini's house. Kurt Martini, Sarah, and Martha on the left, Sarah on the right. Ben Thomas carrying Sarah. The Wiggins Avenue house. This is Martha in Florida. And George, I think. Martha on the right with the daughter of a friend on the left. Marie Poston on the left there. This is at the Illini Country Club. Martha and Sarah in the baby pool. That is Mrs. Hoff. That is Clarice Campbell Holtz with the blonde hair on the left. This is the swing set of Wiggins Avenue. It's George and Sarah boxing. The three Thomas children in Old Mission. Martha and Sarah dressed as Indians in Old Mission. Clarice Campbell Holtz, or no, that might have been Dell Davies. This is Peachy Lillard, who used to live in the Worrell House. This is the beach in front of the Oxtoby Jacobs house. That's Dell Davies. Martha and Sarah. Sarah. I think that's Mary Cross. Martha with a baby buggy again back in Springfield. The Vaughn tennis court, Sarah serving. Sarah with Chick Olinger, her brother's friend. Marilyn Blondell, a friend of Martha's. George and his friend Chick Olinger. Dell Davies in the pink suit. Judy Colclough, quickly. Chick Patton, Dr. Patton. Betty Hellier King with her pet pig. Georgia Curris, Judy Colclough, visiting guest. Georgia Curris was visiting. Judy Colclough was from the, now what is the Worrell House? Sarah Thomas. John Shilson in the background. Hugh McVicker was our first counselor. Dell Davies. Bill Patton dressed as a girl. Chick Patton and Bill Patton with their dog on the carport roof. Tennis on the Vaughn tennis court. John Shilson, Hugh McVicker, Diane Davies was quickly there. Dell Davies, John Shilson's back. Martha, her friend Marilyn. Dr. Patton again. Michael Kreider and his cousin Jerry. I think that's Louise Funk. Sarah and Chick Patton. Bill Patton and Sarah. Hugh McVicker, the counselor. Steve Barthoff, Martha, Dell, Steve Barthoff, Bill Patton, Dell Davies, George with Bill Patton, that's Dell. Sarah and Dell. George, Thomas, and Dell. Mary Peticolas on the right. Monty Myers with the striped shirt. Bobby Potter. Martha's friend Marilyn. This is Dick McClure. Don Funk. Dell Davies. Nettie Gerster. Patty Rudolph. Patty Kreider Rudolph. Hugh McVicker. That's Trum Worrell. Jim Worrell. Nettie Gerster, who married George. Martha. Sarah. Patty Rudolph. Bob Potter. Hugh McVicker with Martha washing the dog. Hugh was, as I said, the first counselor. Came for 4 summers. Sarah and Martha at tennis. This is Heine at the Kreider house. Heine, all grown up, getting very old. He lived to be about 15. The standard-sized dachshund. Sarah. I think that's all.